Imagine knowing something that could save a woman's life. Not a vague suspicion, certain knowledge, a tool you have used that works, that you have seen pull a baby from an obstructed birth when nothing else could, when the alternative was the death of the mother, the baby, or both. Now imagine keeping that knowledge secret, charging fortunes for it, attending births alone, with the door closed, with the mother blindfolded, with noisemakers used to drown out the sounds through the adjoining wall, so that no one, not the husband, not the physician waiting outside, not anyone could see what you were doing or understand how you were doing it. Imagine doing this not for one generation, but for four. Not for a decade, but for over 150 years. While women died in births where your tool could have saved them, while other physicians struggled without it, while the secret sat in an oversized gilded box carried into delivery rooms by two men who made a show of its weight and its mystery. This is not a thought experiment. This is what the Chamberlain family did between approximately 1600 and 1750. And the instrument they kept secret while women died is still used in delivery rooms today. The Chamberlains were French Huguenots, Protestant refugees who fled France in 1569 under threat of religious persecution and settled in England. William Chamberlain, the patriarch, had two sons, both of whom he named Peter. Both Peters became practitioners of what was called man midwifery, the emerging profession of male physicians attending childbirth, which was previously an exclusively female domain. At some point after their arrival in England, one of the brothers, most likely Peter the Elder, invented a device for assisting in difficult deliveries. Two curved metal blades that could be carefully positioned around a baby's head inside the birth canal, allowing the attendant to gently guide and pull the baby out in cases where labor had stalled or the baby was positioned badly. Obstetric forceps. They are described today as looking like a cross between salad tongs and a tool for extracting very large teeth. They are still used today in a small percentage of difficult deliveries, though modified significantly from the Chamberlain design. In the hands of a trained attendant, they could deliver a baby that could not be delivered any other way. They could do this without the destructive instruments that had been used before, hooks and knives that were used only to remove dead babies from dead or dying mothers. The forceps could deliver a living baby from a living mother. The Chamberlains knew this. They used this knowledge to become the most sought-after obstetricians in England. They attended royalty. Peter the Elder was employed as Queen Henrietta Maria's personal midwife. Generations of the family attended the aristocracy and upper classes at a premium that no other attendant could match, because no other attendant could do what they could do. They were the only people in England who could reliably deliver a baby that everyone else had given up on. And they told no one how. The operational secrecy was elaborate and deliberate. The Chamberlains arrived at births in curtained carriages. Two men were required to carry their instrument into the home in an oversized gilded box, giving the impression of great weight and mystery around an object that would have been quite portable if they had wanted it to be. The expectant mother was taken into the delivery room alone and blindfolded before the box was opened. Everyone else, husband, relatives, waiting physicians, was kept outside the door. Inside, the family employed noisemakers and clappers. The sounds that came through the door, the banging, the bells, were designed to prevent anyone listening at the wall from understanding what was happening. When the delivery was complete, the instrument went back into the box. The box went back into the carriage. The mother had given birth. The blindfold had ensured she could not describe what she had seen. The surviving family members knew nothing more than that the Chamberlains had somehow succeeded where others had failed. This continued through 4 generations. Peter the Elder, Peter the Younger, their nephew Peter the Third, and finally Hugh Chamberlain. The financial logic was simple and monstrous. A tool that saves lives in the hands of the only people who possess it is worth whatever the desperate will pay, and the desperate would pay anything. Here is the part that moves from monstrous to tragic. In the late 17th century, Hugh Chamberlain, by then the last active male member of the family, with no heir interested in continuing the obstetric practice, attempted to sell the secret. He travelled to France and offered the design to the French medical establishment for a substantial sum. The French examined what he showed them and declined. According to historical accounts, they believed he had shown them only one blade of the instrument, keeping the critical mechanism still secret even in the act of selling it. And they were not fooled. He eventually sold a design to a Dutch physician named van Roonhuisen. Whether it was the complete instrument or a partial version remains disputed. What is documented is that the secret began to leak. By the early 18th century, versions of forceps began appearing among European physicians, in the Netherlands, in France, in England, as the design apparently spread through what could be reconstructed from the observable results. In 1813, something was discovered in an old house in Essex that had once belonged to the Chamberlain family. Under the floorboards of the attic, hidden there by Peter the Elder's wife after his death, were the original instruments. 5 pairs of obstetric forceps. The actual tools, sitting in a hiding place under the floor of a house that had been sold out of the family, undiscovered for over a century. They are now held at the Royal College of Obstetricians and Gynecologists. You can see them. The tools that saved some babies and withheld salvation from others. Hidden under floorboards for a century because the person who hid them understood that the secret was the family's most valuable asset. Without the protection of their secret, the only legacy left by the Chamberlain family was one of tragedy and greed. The broader adoption of forceps from the mid-18th century onwards is now estimated to have reduced maternal mortality by up to 50% in the cases where obstructed labour had previously been a death sentence. That number represents the counterfactual, the lives that were saved once the tool was widely available, and therefore implies something about the lives that were not saved during the 150 years it was secret. We do not know how many women died in obstructed labours during those 150 years that a Chamberlain forceps could have resolved. The records are incomplete. The deaths were recorded as complications of childbirth, not as failures of secrecy, but the mathematics of it are there, quiet and precise, behind the case notes and the church burial records of 17th century England. Women died in deliveries that were technically solvable. The solution existed. It was in a gilded box in a curtained carriage. The medical ethics frameworks that govern research and clinical practice today exist in part because of cases like this one. The principle that medical knowledge cannot be privately held in ways that harm patients has legal and ethical force today. It did not in 1600. The Chamberlains operated in a world where a physician could keep a life-saving tool secret for personal financial gain and face no professional consequences. The tool eventually escaped. The consequences for the women who needed it during those 150 years did not. Subscribe if you want to keep going. Every week, the history that changes what you thought you knew.